As many of you might be aware, this Jaguar nickel sulphide project was acquired from Vale in September last year, and we've quickly gone to work to try to develop this project further, and we have some great plans ahead for what we're doing there. So it'll be a great opportunity today to talk you through all of that. When we picked up this project last year, it was a relatively advanced project, had 55,000 metres of drilling already completed by Vale through to 2006 to 2010. They had a foreign resource on there of 315,000 tonnes of contained metal. So by any standard, this is a large deposit. We're now focusing in on the high-grade zones within that deposit, and we look forward to bringing our maiden JORC resource to the market, hopefully by the end of June. Work's well advanced in respect to that, so we look forward to that coming to market. That should then feed into a scoping study, which we're aiming to complete by the end of Q3, and then onwards and upwards from that point on with further feasibility and development work. From a register point of view, Paul just touched on that. We're very pleased to welcome Kerry Harmanis to the register in a 5% capacity last week. Obviously, Kerry knows a thing or two about nickel, so it's very pleasing to have him as part of what we're doing. I think he'll bring a bit of awareness to what we're doing, and that's got to be a positive thing. We've also had some recent brokerage coverage, which has been pleasing. Those documents are on our webpage, but I think the share price graphs tends to reflect some of those recent events transpiring. Management has a strong position in the company, and we're very motivated to take this project forward. The team that I've got with me, Roger and Bruno, have been with me for 10 years now. Joined the company in 2010. Bruno heads up the team in Brazil. Roger's lived in Brazil for over 10 years, now back here in Australia as operations manager. So the combination of these guys with the team that we've sort of added to the mix in the last little while gives us a great launching pad to be able to take this project forward. There's a lot of nickel experience in the group now, and that's going to be very important as we look to develop Jaguar. So from a market point of view, I mean, this is one of the things that we think the timing is absolutely right for this project. Heading through the middle of this decade, we'd expect to see nickel demand increasing significantly with the EV boom, and no matter where you think that demand profile might go, there's still a lot more nickel that needs to be found to feed that. We feel like we're in a very strong position to do that. You're going to be looking to supply the nickel sulphides or HPAL into these growing demand curve, and right now nickel sulphide certainly feels like it's a much easier proposition. So importantly, where we are in Brazil, we're in the Caraji mineral province, and the Caraji really is a global mineral province. It is has very significant mines in that region. Vale have dominated that region for a number of years, and it's really, I guess, been fortuitous for us to have developed such a strong relationship with Vale where we were able to complete the deal and do this transaction over Jaguar. They have a mini mines model. They're looking for people who can take projects into development to start working up projects that just simply don't fit their size criteria, and that's Jaguar to a T. It's a great project, lots of grade, but just probably didn't meet Vale's criteria. So we're in what I would call an effective industrial zone in Brazil, which gives us a great head start on development type activities. There's plenty of roads, there's power in there, there's plenty of water. We can fly in there on 737 aircraft. So what an amazing location to have a project. So what we picked up from Vale was this 315,000 tonnes as a foreign resource. They drilled this area over 3 kilometres on 100 metre line spacing. That hit a number of high-grade zones, which we never really followed up. And our model is really to tighten up that drill spacing, focused in on that high grade, and then looking to start the project with smaller open pits and then progressively move underground. So if you look at this long section, I'll just sort of zoom in on that, and what we've done is we've split that up into a number of deposit areas. So in that southeastern corner of the tenement, we have 5 areas there within that 3 kilometres long zone which we've been working. So initial work is focused on Jaguar South in the very southeast corner and on the Onça Preta deposit in the northern part of the tenement. More recently, we've moved the drill rigs into the Jaguar Central and Jaguar North areas, and we've been getting very strong, consistent results. Obviously, it's an infill program, an extensional program, but for the majority of our drilling, we've been getting all grade intercepts, and very good ones at that. So just looking at Jaguar South, I think there's about 45 drill holes in there now. We've probably done another 20 of those. Those light blue rectangles on the screen, they are the downhole EM plates that we've picked up from either Vale's historical work or more recently our own downhole electromagnetic surveys. One of the things in this part of the world, in the Caraji, is that generally where you have EM conductor plates, you do have massive sulphides, and we now need to just follow those up and continue to identify these high-grade zones. Some of the intersections more recently, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, were reported 30 odd metres at 2% nickel, 21 metres at 2.5% nickel from only 22 metres depth. So one of the unique things about this deposit is the mineralisation does tend to come to surface. We think there's a very, very strong opportunity for open pit mining, which really does distinguish us in the context of a nickel sulphide operation, certainly with higher grades. And the other thing that's happened, I guess, with the drilling that we've been doing is that we've been getting this consistency between zones. So whilst the jury was out when we first picked up this project as to whether the high-grade zones hang together, I'm very confident that we are now seeing that those zones do hang together, and these 4 sections really show from west to east the continuity. And if you, at your leisure, if you look at the detail on those sections, you'll see some of those high-grade zones very close to surface. And that's what gets us excited, where we can actually start this project on open pittable material and then look to move underground. I think the other thing to note here is that you can sort of see the light blue downhole EM conductor plates extend well beyond the depth of drilling. As we go deeper, we'd expect to find more mineralisation, more high-grade mineralisation, and that's consistent across the project areas. So Onça Preta in the northern part of the tenement, again, we drilled that out as one of the first areas. We've got a lot of consistency there. Again, you'll be able to look through all of those sections, but that project area has come together well. We see mineralisation very close to surface. So in the middle section here, there's a zone of 15 metres running at 3% nickel from only 50 metres from surface. We've drilled a long strike from there. We've hit the zone. So again, looks like a very neat little open pit opportunity there before we look to move into underground operations. And just along strike from Onça Preta, about 600 metres along strike to the west, there was a new area that wasn't within the Vale, I guess, historical resource called Onça Rosa. There was one hole in there that Vale had drilled at 8 metres at just over 5% nickel. It was one of the last holes they drilled into the program. We've done some follow-up work there, and we've been able to intersect high-grade mineralisation down dip and also along strike. That looks like a very interesting prospect for us. Further work still needs to be done, but what I think it does show is that as we progress through the work that we do, we are seeing high-grade mineralisation and very strong correlation between the downhole EM conductor plates and where we hit the high-grade zones. And where we're drilling now, Jaguar Central and Jaguar North deposits, the same model as what we found at Jaguar South we're looking to deploy here. So historical drill intersections, 30 odd metres at 2.5% nickel from only 15 metres, 26 metres at over 2% nickel from just over 60 metres depth. So this is shallow mineralisation, very high-grade mineralisation, and we'll come in and infill those high-grade zones and hopefully replicate what we've been able to do at Jaguar South with our own drilling. Regionally, there's a lot of prospectivity out to the western part of the tenement. There was very little drilling work done by Vale out there. We're infilling the soils, we're infilling the mag, we'll do our own fixed loop and survey work out there. And there's a number of targets that our geologists really like. So look forward to getting into those targets at the back end of this year. But right now there's a lot of work going on just in the known deposit areas. So I guess the combination of prospectivity here is, looking at some of these regional targets out to the west, but also further drilling deeper in time. Up until now, we haven't needed to drill deeper because there's so much good stuff close to surface. From a MET perspective, we've been undertaking our initial flow sheet and MET work. Looks very good. Plus 80% nickel recoveries, generating a 16% nickel concentrate. We've had 2 samples, composite samples tested. We've got a third being tested at the moment. And so we're not really seeing anything untoward in the metallurgy that we need to get concerned about. Environmentally, we've been in Brazil 10 years. We know what we need to do in respect to environmental approvals. Bruno Scarpelli, our country manager, is a bit of a guru in environmental approvals, having worked on the S11D project and Salobo project for Vale in the Caraji before joining Centaurus. We have also done a lot of licensing work on an iron ore project back in the early parts of this decade, and we're continuing just to do that work that we need to, wet season, dry season data collection, working that through so that we can lodge the key environmental document by the middle of next year. And I think I touched on this earlier, that the logistics were really quite interesting for us. There's sealed roads all the way out to the project. The Vale Onça Puma ferronickel plant is only 15 kilometres away. Vale have spent $3 billion on that project, so you do have a lot of quality infrastructure in that region. There's 230 kV power running into Onça Puma. There's a 138 kV line running through Tucumã, where our office is based. We're in a farmland region, so really no impediments here to being able to develop a project. And that's just a picture of the ferronickel plant of Vale. You can sort of see the scale of operations in this region. Gives us a lot of confidence that we can develop a project, particularly given Vale's got a vested interest in the outcome of what we're doing. Timeline, as touched upon earlier, we will be getting our maiden JORC resource out by the middle of this year, at the end of June, working through scoping study work through the third quarter, looking to deliver that by the end of Q3. And then the expectation is that we'll be launching straight into pre-feasibility study work in the first part of Q4. So a lot of activity going on. We're able to continue to work at the present point in time. We've got 2 rigs going at the Jaguar Central and Jaguar North areas, and there's a lot of news flow ahead. So I guess from an investment point of view, I think Centaurus is really just on the start of its journey. You've just heard from Carl on the Sandfire story. That's something that we look to and we want to replicate. The growth that they've been able to achieve, the size of their market cap, that's something that we aspire to over the next few years. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Darren. A couple of questions have come in.
Sure, Paul.
What is happening with the Jambera iron ore project, particularly given the high iron ore price at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think Jambera is one of those ones that we feel is a very good project. We completed pre-feasibility rework, I guess, middle of 2019, still has good economics. But in order to make that project get off the ground, you need to have an offtake agreement, which allows you to then go and get financing. For us, the focus is on the nickel. You can see from the quality of the nickel project, but right now we're just trying to look at the best way to realise value from Jambera, and there's a few opportunities that are bubbling away in respect to that, but nothing that's imminent right now.
And another question is, do you think that the initial resource at Jaguar will be big enough to take the company into production, or do you think you'll have to do some further exploration?
Look, I think the resource that we define will certainly be big enough to justify the project, and that's what we'll look to start with, but it will be a maiden resource. We will be continuing to drill probably for the next 2 or 3 years. So There's a lot of drilling work to be done, a lot of results to be had, more infill work to be done. But right where we sit right now, the aim is to get a resource that underpins the project and allows us to be able to make those decisions along the way in feasibility study.
And has the coronavirus had any impact on your operations in Brazil?
Not really. I guess coronavirus in Brazil at the moment is obviously very topical. They're not having a great run at it at the moment. But Centaurus has done all that it can in respect of its people. It's got all of the protocols that we would adopt in Australia, and our guys feel very safe when they go to work. We haven't really had to do too much differently. We're still drilling right now. We've got 2 rigs going. We've slowed down the pace of drilling, but outside of that, the work is still progressing as planned in country.
And finally, what's the prospect of a listing for the company in Canada?
Look, not something that's high on the agenda at this point in time. We think that the Australian market is still a very good market to be based on, particularly being in nickel sulphides. And at the end of the day, that all depends on where your investor base is located. If the transition comes at some point in time in the future where there's more North American presence, well, we can look at those things. But right now, that's not something high on our agenda.